please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Hello and welcome to this Teachers' Day special on CNBC TV18. I'm Mitali Patel. Whenever there's a crisis, be it a terror attack or a natural calamity, we turn to the experts for reasons and solutions. What we don't realize is that the foundation of society was laid many years ago by our educators. They shape minds and remain the unsung heroes. This Teachers' Day, I have with me a host of experts to discuss how to empower the teacher. Joining me now are Maya Menon, founder of the Teacher Foundation, Education Strategist Meeta Sengupta, World Bank's Education Specialist Kumar Vivek, and P. Krishna Kumar from Dell, India. Welcome to the program, ladies and gentlemen. Let me kick off the discussion with Maya, who is the teacher of teachers. We are in a dire situation right now because India faces a big shortage of teachers, and that's mainly because of the sheer size of our young population. According to a 2015 report by the UNESCO Institute of Statistics, Nigeria faces the biggest shortfall of teachers, while India comes second. Unfortunately, the teachers we do have are not adequately trained, and yet every teacher I've met is keen to put her best foot forward. So what can we do to empower the teacher, Maya?
I don't think any teacher walks into a school or classroom saying, I want to be a bad teacher, or I want to do a bad job of teaching my students. But hundreds and maybe a few lakhs of teachers who go into classrooms regularly don't necessarily do a good job. And the reason is because it's been a profession that's been disempowered for many decades. And I think what we need to do, we have a crisis of teachers in terms of shortage as well as quality of teachers and teaching. And it's important to state it up front that it is a crisis and we need to address it on a war footing. Right now, teachers have just been for all these decades, they've just been followers. They've just been asked to do what they're supposed to do. They don't necessarily decide what they want to do, what they need to do in order to improve quality of learning for children. And I think that is the biggest tragedy in these 70+ years of Indian independence. You know, there's a lot of research which says teachers teach the way they have been taught. And the way they have been taught, the way a lot of us have been taught in our schools has been very mediocre, very exam-oriented, very marks-driven, trying to cut corners in order to just pass that exam and do well and get that piece of paper, whether it's a school-leaving exam or a bachelor's or a B.Ed and so on. And we have to get teachers out of that system of learning. We have to help them adopt a different way of learning. So in the work we do at the Teacher Foundation, a lot of the times what we are doing is help them experience authentic learning, where they have a voice, where they can say, where they can disagree with each other, where they can come up with new ideas. So it's about helping them experience a new kind of learning for themselves, where they work in groups, where they work individually, where they do projects, and a lot of the times we don't just train so-called trained teachers, we also go into the classrooms, coach and mentor them. And that is important, that hand-holding and mentoring support, that personal support that teachers need, that is important.
That's right. In-service training is really important because a teacher can be a better teacher only once she's seen her classroom and understood her students. Mr. Krishna Kumar, I want to come to you now. Dell has interacted with thousands of teachers in Tier 3 to Tier 5 cities through your computer literacy program. What was your experience like on the ground?
Fundamental problem is that, you know, teachers do not know how to use technology, right? And therefore, how do you then be able to teach the students? That becomes a challenge. So what we did is, after researching teachers, we found that they were not exposed to technology at their earliest stage of their careers and their lives, and therefore that was an hindrance in terms of their ability to teach children on how to use technology creatively to solve problems. So what we did is we embarked on going, and it's a small number, if I look at the population of teachers in the school, we're touching about 5,000 schools, touching about 80,000 teachers, where we're teaching them on how to use PCs, but not how to use PCs in terms of just to use them, but to use them in their jobs, in their vocation, to use them for classroom teaching, to spawn creativity in children, give them project works which will help them to solve small problems. And that's the effort that we're doing to try and see how we can get teachers to influence children, and that can become a multiplier effect for the progress of this nation.
Right, so using technology to enable the teacher is certainly one way. But the other problem that we see is that teaching as a career isn't attractive enough for most people. Not many talented people I know want to be a teacher. So how can we rebrand the profession as school? Meeta, what do you think?
Rebranding teaching is actually one of the bigger challenges that we have within the sector, because traditionally we have had a huge amount of respect for teachers. And when you rebrand, often you lose what you already have. So as he's referred to the Guru Shishya Parampara, we would like to rebrand while we retain the old. Teachers actually have so many other options, so many other pathways within education that they can grow into. There is just so much potential to do good in education that can only be done if you have had deep experience of active teaching and learning. The joy is that we can discover many of those pathways. Some of them are already available to us. There is expertise in administration, like I said, that's already been developed, and it's a known pathway to us. There is expertise in teacher training, and in which we have excellence here at the panel, but it is done in different ways. Many teachers can grow up to become mentors. The CBSE, in fact, had a program for mentors for school principals that lasted for about a year or two. It was beginning to be very successful. We can have teachers as mentors. Teachers often are subject specialists as well. So for mathematics, for chemistry, you can have domain and subject expertise in which they lead the conversation. Teachers very often become advocates and activists, not necessarily in a political way. You do not have to become a politician to actually promote better teaching and learning in the classroom. When we go and speak to groups of teachers who are less trained than others, they just have one question: could you tell us how to manage a classroom? Simple classroom behavior management, simple, it seems simple to us though, because we are trained. Most government school teachers are trained. But those who are good at sharing their knowledge of these various pathways should have a certification pathway, should have a motivated, incentivized pathway to be able to grow in their own skills and talents. Some teachers are great event managers as well. You do not have to quit event management to become, you do not have to quit teaching to become a great event manager. You could be leading grand events in education.
All right, so we'll continue talking about one of the teacher pathways on the other side of this short break. Stay tuned. Into break, we were talking about different opportunities for the teacher. We have professors from top universities also get motivated by opportunities in research and private consulting in addition to their existing teaching roles. Mr. Krishna Kumar, do you think there is a similar model that can be adopted for the school ecosystem to make teaching a more sought after profession with more commercial opportunities?
Well, I would say, Mitali, you should look into two aspects, right? When you look at school education, you're nurturing the young mind and you're letting teachers enable the child to explore multiple things and build different skill sets. So I would say the early school, primary school, middle school is probably a period where it should be where the teacher, as Meeta was saying, is a hero, and the child should be looking at the teacher to learn different things, right? But when it comes to high school, I think what you're saying, there's an immense potential and possibility there. Given the spread of our schools in different cities, different villages, there are different problems which are there in different localities. And I think students should be encouraged to go find solutions for those problems. Teachers should encourage children to go and be entrepreneurs, because I think we as a nation can only progress when we are either looking at creating jobs for ourselves or looking at jobs for more people. So to spawn a nation of entrepreneurs, you need to have teachers who are enabling that process. You need to have teachers who can understand what skill sets are required. And therefore, teachers also participate in that entrepreneurship. So we talk about this teacherpreneurs, right? Teacherpreneurs are teachers who spawn entrepreneurs. I think that is what we should be looking at nurturing from a high school level onwards. that is where the teenagers can start looking at options and exploring. And in my mind, technology becomes a great barrier breaker because it bridges things, it accelerates development of solutions. And therefore, if teachers and students can together look at technology to solve multiple solutions, it becomes a wonderful blend where teachers benefit, the students benefit, and the society and the nation benefits as a whole. I think that's possible as an option. So to answer your question straight, the answer is yes, but I would probably say at a high school level.
You mentioned entrepreneurs, and we do have a new crop of social entrepreneurs in the field of education. There's teacherpreneurs, there's edupreneurs who aren't teachers but entrepreneurs in the field of education, and there is also education technology or the ed tech space where a lot of innovation is going on at present. Kumar Vivek, how can it be made to work in favor of the teachers of India?
When it comes to solutions for teacher empowerment, I think there are two ways to look at such solutions. The first one is on the management side, which is how does the government would really be able to improve its ability to get the right teachers into the right schools, and how can it enable the conditions for them to deliver on their jobs. And the second one is on the capacity and quality side of teachers themselves, which is around how do we support teachers to become more effective in the classroom. So if we look at the first challenge, which is on the management side, India suffers from very basic level issues. For example, we have huge variation in the distribution of teachers across states. So you have thousands of schools in each state which have either too many teachers or too few teachers. And these could be some basic process inefficiencies in terms of initial deployment of these teachers or in redeployment or transfer of these teachers. The good news is there is a lot of solution which is coming up from the government side itself. So for example, let's take the case of Karnataka. In Karnataka today, you have the applications for teacher training colleges coming from the public side, the applications for applying for a teacher's job, application for transfers when you're already in a teaching job. All of this is online. How was this made possible? Because the government started thinking about changes which could, from the policy perspective. So there was something called Regulation of Transfer of Teachers Act, which enabled a set of rules which could make sure that the transfers are not ad hoc. There was a common entrance test, which made sure that the recruitment process and initial deployment was systematic. And the technology came into picture when you wanted to enable these set of rules, the ground rules which were set by the government. So the technology helped in handling a large set of numbers, supporting a multiple level criteria for the kind of rules you're setting in on a dynamic basis, and all of it using transparency. So this was done in-house using the software developed by NIC. And this is a great example of how technology could enable the rules which were being set to promote these kind of transparencies and effective management in the government systems. So if you have information on teachers, if you have, say, a database which gives you their deployment history, it gives their training history, then you can always enable a transparent, merit and experience-based management system. And this is something which we are trying to do in partnership with the government of Bihar through a World Bank project on getting these kind of systems. So this is just an example on the management capacity side of it.
Right, so that is about EdTech. In addition to that, Kumar, what role does the World Bank play at present in the Indian education sector, especially related to the teachers and empowering them?
World Bank has had a long partnership with India. We work with the public sector, so we work with governments at the central and the state level. And typically from our education side, we work on the most pressing challenges which we have. So over the last 6 decades, we have had programs for teacher training. We have had programs on improving assessment systems and improving school level inputs as well as management capacities. So in addition to that, I think the World Bank prides itself as a knowledge bank. So we have a strong focus on bringing our global expertise from around the world and also generating a lot of local knowledge and then supporting the formulation and policy for addressing the implementation challenges which the government have.
Right. I want to go across to Meeta now and talk about teachers of higher education institutes, including graduation, post-graduation and the vocational courses, because what they do affects the job market directly. We talk a lot about employment opportunities, but employability is equally important, where these teachers play a critical role. How do we help them give their best, Meeta?
Higher education is a whole other interesting segment, because we have had higher education regulated by the UGC, the AICTE. Now we have the HECI coming in, and we realize when we speak to professors in the segments, whether it is the IITs, the IIMs, or the universities and their associated colleges, we have to acknowledge that this is an over-regulated but under-governed sector. The professors there have no reason to step beyond the traditional lecture mode of teaching and learning. And the traditional lecture mode of teaching and learning does not transmit more than knowledge, or the old-fashioned knowledge going from a higher level to a lower level kind of power structure. Times have changed. We have a whole other universe in front of us. 21st century skills demand our students to be creators, to be innovators, to actually build a whole new world. And they will be employed not just for what they know, because they can always refer to that. They will be employed for their reliability, which needs to be tested via projects, exercises, research, critical thinking abilities. They will be hired for their ability to manage a situation, which includes things like communication and whatnot, none of which is taught in schools. And they will be hired for their risk-taking abilities. And within our higher education sector, neither do the teachers or lecturers or professors demonstrate that risk-taking ability.
Yes, it's interesting you mentioned that, because I also wanted to ask you, do you think there is scope for the government, people from the industry, and the college professors to collaborate and hone the skills of these students?
That's absolutely essential, and that is the missing component in education today. Universities turn around and tell schools that you are sending us students who are not prepared to do independent work. Schools turn around and say that the responsibility for building good citizens is ours, but the responsibility for building employment belongs to the universities or the colleges or the training institutions that send people out into employment. The government itself has been asking the big and small questions in skills for the longest time, saying here is training being offered. But unless we have a solution that is engineered in a way that works for all of them to work in synchronicity and with synergy together, where schools are learning what to teach their students so that universities can train them further for the need of universities with the support of the government, unless all four of these come together, we are not going to be able to solve the logjam, the blockage that we have arrived at today in Indian education. Who takes the lead in that? I think the intellectual lead, this is my personal opinion, I think the intellectual lead in this has to be taken by higher education professors, because they claim to be, and they are in a position to actually research and understand more aspects of this question than any of the other people are. They are the ones who have to create this consultative, constructive environment where we are able to share knowledge about teaching and learning and improve learning outcomes, both for employability and for citizenship.
Right. We are actually running out of time now, but Maya, I'll give you the final word. The government is working on several aspects: teacher salaries, digital training centers for teachers, and other incentives. What do you reckon would be the most effective?
If you're looking at education and if you're considering improving the quality of learning that is provided to children, you have to cut across party lines. You have to have a 25-year vision for education. Unfortunately, governments exist for 5 years, and usually, therefore, they have a 5-year plan. But education the field that it is and the work that it involves requires a 25, 30-year vision. And that most governments are not in power for 30 years. And that is perhaps been the biggest stumbling block for improving the quality of school education, at least in India, because I can't speak much about higher education, but school education has been fraught with problems because we're constantly looking at it in a very, very short-term way, whereas we have to, if we care for the young of our country as citizens of the world and developing citizens of the world, we have to have a 25-year vision. And which means that parties have to come together and work out a plan.
Parties have to come together, and we need at least a 25-year vision for the education sector. On that note, we are completely out of time on the program, but do let us know what you thought about the discussion. Goodbye for now.